the man whose weekly Monday morning quarterback column on the MMQB.com is must-read material, at @SI_Peter King on Twitter, back here on The Rich Eisen Show. How are you, PK?
Rich Eisen, everything's okay. How about you?
I'm doing great. In your days, years of covering this sport, have you ever heard of a team willingly cutting its starting center 2.5 weeks before the opening season game, as the Patriots just did with Brian Stork, Peter?
Well, I mean, something happened there that we'll all find out in the coming days. But again, remember, I don't know how many games David Andrews started last year, but I bet it was more than half. It certainly was close to half. And so, I think the Patriots view their offensive line, they view it a little bit differently than almost anybody in football, in that they want to get 8 or 9 guys ready to play, and then they will play them all so that for events like this, when something like this happens and they choose that they're going to get rid of one of those guys, that they'll be able to plug and play with somebody else. I'm assuming Andrews, but we'll see.
And so the Nate Washington release as well, we all understand that New England is getting ready for life without Tom Brady for 4 games. Do you know what Brady's going to do for those first weeks of the season? Have you heard? Have you kicked around on that or spoken to Brady at all, perhaps, about how he is going to spend the month off for New England?
No, I don't know. I have not spoken to him, so I don't know. I mean, I had heard that he was going to be working out some with Randy Moss and Wes Welker, throwing to them at some point. But I don't know. I mean, if I know Brady, though, he's going to make sure that he's not visible and that he's not any sort of, I think the word distraction is too much. When I was at the Patriots camp, what I ended up writing when I came out of there is that when are we going to stop saying the word distraction with the New England Patriots? They don't. It's not applicable. It just isn't. They don't. Nothing with that stuff ever bothers them. And Belichick just doesn't let it. The players know that if they're bothered by it in any way, that they're either going to be gone or they're going to be benched. So, I don't think it's going to be very bothersome to them, whatever Brady does.
All right, let's hit some of these quarterback situations, Peter King. I know you wrote this week you thought Trevor Siemian had the edge, but now he can't even throw in practice this week. Obviously, if it was a game, that might be a different story, but with the dress rehearsal coming up over the weekend against Los Angeles and then the real deal starting in a couple of weeks from tomorrow, how do you suss out the Broncos starting quarterback situation?
I think Gary Kubiak, going into last weekend, like Simeon more than either Sanchez or Lynch to start at the start of the year. I don't think that has changed. But obviously, if Trevor Simeon's arm is going to be a bother, and if he can't throw the ball well or has to take some days off, my gut feeling is he'd probably be more inclined to go with Lynch over Sanchez. Sanchez really sounded like a beaten man after he played poorly in that last preseason game. I mean, if Simeon's not ready to play and I'm Kubiak, my gut feeling is Kubiak would go with Lynch right now.
And what's happening in San Francisco with Colin Kaepernick? It always seems, certainly in the last year and a half, 2 years, that there's more than meets the eye with Kaepernick in the front office or his coaches as soon as Harbaugh left, where there's a fatigue issue, and now he's going to maybe play this weekend, and he's taking reps, but he's not taking reps. Well, what's the situation with him in San Francisco, Peter?
Rich, I think the biggest thing right now is that, Chip Kelly is going to play the quarterback who he thinks best fits his offense and best runs his offense.
How is it not right Kaepernick, though, right, Peter?
It's a great question. And I quoted a division rival this week in my column basically saying, what the heck is wrong with Kaepernick? What is going on with Kaepernick?
Right.
That's going to be a book someday. And I agree. I mean, but I think what it comes down to is now he's had 2 different coaches post Harbaugh, Greg Roman. And so both of those coaches, obviously have seen something in him. Certainly Tom Sula did, that, he didn't love. And so obviously he let Gabbert play last year. And now this year, again, I talked to Chip Kelly in Denver last week when I was there. And Chip Kelly looked at me very earnestly and said, basically the old Parcellsism, it wasn't his exact quote, but I can only go by what I see. I need the guy to be out there. And he was out there for a bunch in the off-season program. And I just think in this particular case, Chip Kelly also likes Gabbert and thinks he fits his offense very well, the same way that he thought Sam Bradford fit his offense a year ago.
But nobody seems to have fit his. I know Foles lit it up on a couple of weeks,
Right.
But nobody lit it up like Vic, right? With the ability to run and throw and misdirect. It just seems to me that if Kaepernick does not get a shot in the Kelly offense, then there really is something that we do not know that's happening behind the scenes here.
Look, I think part of it is, at least late in the Harbaugh-Roman regime, part of it was, they didn't think that he was enough of a student in the off season, and I think they wanted to see more of him, as far as advancing his game and not just relying on his great athletic ability. So again, but I don't know. Kelly was very high on Kaepernick to me, but again, I think the proof is going to be in the pudding. In my opinion, is Rich, absolutely unequivocally, he's going to get a shot this year. And if he doesn't do well, I think he's going to be gone at the end of this year in San Francisco.
Peter King joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. And Peter, with your years of knowledge and connections, as well as being a Pro Football Hall of Fame guy, you're the perfect guy to ask this question. With the backup quarterback in Dallas, the Rich Eisen Show reported yesterday, and maybe you can confirm it, that Dak Prescott is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's already been inducted as member 304. What can you tell me about that? Is that true, Peter? Is he in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I think it's true. We don't want to say anything yet, but
sure.
We've hurried his bust into production, and before the preseason game this weekend, he will be inducted into Kansas.
I think he is there, right? Is this true? Will they really? I understand he's looking really good, very sharp, and may have the abilities to be a pro football quarterback. And who knows? In this league that we've seen Russell Wilson most recently do what he did.
Right.
I get it. I understand. But will Jerry Jones really go into the season with Tony Romo being backed up by a raw rookie after what we saw last year? Will that really happen?
I think, but let me just ask you this question. If I asked you this right now, knowing what you know right now,
yes,
and I said to you, you can have a choice for your backup quarterback this year. You can have Matt Castle, you could have Kellen Moore, or you could have Dak Prescott. Now Kellen Moore obviously is hurt. He's out. Matt Castle is not there anymore, so he's out. But they paid a $5 last year for Matt Castle to the Buffalo Bills. And Matt Castle was poor last year in Dallas.
No question.
So the whole issue now, and obviously Kellen Moore hurt this year before the season. So the whole issue now is, what do you do if you're them? Do you go out and get another veteran guy who may or may not be any good? Or do you go with the guy who's had a great spring, obviously a tremendous summer, and just say, look, if we have to play the backup quarterback anyway, then the season most likely is lost. But so, what do we want to do?
But we saw last year, even with luck going down, and Matthew Hasselbeck at 40 years old keep the ship afloat. In Dallas, in that division last year, could have gone to the playoffs if somebody could have just kept the ship afloat.
Rich, you tell me this. If you can find Matt Hasselbeck to back up Tony Romo, that's great. But I want you to tell me, are you going to find somebody any better than Matt Castle, or even as good as Matt Castle?
So now? Well, you would know. Well, who would the options be other than Matt? Just who would the actual options be right now?
Honestly, the options would be trying to overpay for somebody like Derek Anderson or something, and then you bring in Carolina, or overpay for Drew Stanton, or to say to Arizona, look, you might cut Matt Barkley. We'll give you a 7 for Matt Barkley. But I'm just saying to you, Rich, if Dak Prescott has been in this offense right now for 3 months and has looked great in training camp so far, and not just in these preseason games, then why would you go out and pay for a veteran and probably give a draft choice for a veteran if you have no idea? First of all, the guy's got to come in and learn your offense in 10 minutes. I'd rather have Dak Prescott.
And lastly, Peter, my producer Chris Law, in our pre-show conversation, as well as he got in my ear during this conversation. So, well, what about Clay Matthews and Julius Peppers being interviewed by the league, and then there's James Harrison? You know what I mean? That's the sort of stuff that I think some fans might be interested in and get somewhere else. I'm more interested in why Christian Hackenberg hasn't played a single snap out of Penn State for the New York Jets. Why a team with all these 30-year-olds at quarterback, wide receiver, running back, with a window of opportunity now, would choose a 51st overall selection and not be able to play him at all in the preseason? What is going on?
Agreed.
There, Peter.
I think it's crazy. This is the time, especially in the first 2 preseason games. Even if you feel like he isn't altogether ready, I mean, if he's playing in training camp, if he's practicing with your team, to not have him play to see anything about what you might have, I think it's just strange.
Well, what's the game plan here? I mean, are they going to try and hide him on IR, or what are they going to do?
No. The game plan is he'll obviously, because they can't put him on the practice squad, somebody would come and steal him, even though there's a huge amount of skepticism about whether he's going to be any good at all. But having said that, in my opinion, I think this is all about they want to get max look at Bryce Petty, because it would not surprise me if Bryce Petty stays and Geno Smith goes. That wouldn't surprise me. But how are you going to keep 4 quarterbacks? You're not going to keep 4 quarterbacks, so they got to make a decision between Bryce Petty and Geno Smith.
And then might whoever loses that battle be, just to bring it all full circle, be somebody that Jerry Jones does knock on the door of before the season?
He could, but again, I think the Cowboys would be more likely to pick up a guy on waivers than to actually trade for one. That's just, after having been at that camp, there is no sense of urgency to go get a quarterback unless it's somebody that Scott Linehan either has experience with or is very high on, or is similar with Jason Garrett. But I think Prescott has played well enough and practiced well enough that they don't view it as an urgent need anymore.
And then lastly for you, Peter, Jerry Jones was one of the selected members of this year's finalist group now out of the contributor class. And, I've got an affiliate in Denver, Colorado. There's a lot of people upset that Pat Bowlen didn't get that nod instead of Jerry Jones. Can you walk me through what might have happened in this process, Peter?
First of all, it isn't Jerry Jones versus Pat Bowlen. It was 10 people competing for 2 spots.
Yes.
And I think Pat Bowlen was very close. I mean, this is my opinion, only my opinion. I'm one of the 5 guys who was on the panel that voted. Okay, and the way I saw it come down was Jerry number 1, Tagliabue 2, and Pat Bowlen 3. I absolutely unequivocally believe that Pat Bowlen belongs in the Hall of Fame, will support his candidacy ardently. But in my opinion, Jerry Jones has been the biggest change agent in the NFL in his time in the last quarter century in the NFL. And yes, is his team been mediocre the last 15 years? Absolutely. And that goes on his resume. But when you're an owner in the NFL, there's a lot of things that come into play. What you've done off the field and what you've done in the league is very, very important. And, look, finally, I would just say one thing. Nobody gives Jerry an ounce of credit for the 3 Super Bowls in the first 6 years. I get it. Everybody thinks he's a boob as a general manager. I got that. But if you're going to give Pat Bowlen credit for hiring people and getting out of the way and letting them do their job, then I think, and winning 3 Super Bowls, I think you also have to give Jerry Jones credit for hiring the right people, whether he got out of the way or not, and he didn't, and winning 3 Super Bowls. So even though those happened in the first 6 years, and the last 20 years have been just very average at best, you can't erase what happened in the first 6.
Peter, thanks for the time. Truly appreciate it. Well, I'd love to have you on before the season starts to get your Super Bowl prediction.
Sounds great, Rich.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.
Always. Thank you. That's the editor and chief writer and the creator of the MMQB.com, Peter King.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.